Does anyone know what kind of weird stuff you're looking for online? How do you make sure they do not know? And why those shady people following you around in the dark alley deep at night may actually be professional cryptanalysts? All that and many other things in today's video on cryptography. Cryptography has actually been around the world since ancient times, think Egypt, Greece, Rome and so on, and it served, unsurprisingly, mostly military purposes. Those early encryption methods were rather primitive and rudimentary and were broken fairly quickly. However, they have still paved the way for the modern discipline of cryptography. By the 20th century, cryptography was a very solid section of mathematics and it was working rather well. The degree to which cryptography has progressed by the 20th century is exemplified in the use of Enigma machines by the German army during World War II. In fact, Enigma machines and their constant modifications were working so well that the Allied intelligence had to perform a set of operations just to keep getting new versions of the machine and new code books for them. On one of the occasions, the Allies had to board a sinking German submarine just to retrieve the code books because they were so desperate to break the communications as they were actually losing the naval war against Germany. If you're curious, the code for that U-boat was 559 and you can find more info on that online. It is very telling that all the failures of the Enigma machine were attributed to human factor rather than the failing of the technology itself. Today, in the 21st century, cryptography is used in pretty much everything, including the video you're watching right now. Each frame of this video is actually encrypted on YouTube servers, sent over to you over the internet, and then decrypted in your browser in real time. How cool is that? Whenever you try to download anything from a website, use cryptography. Whenever you try to log into some online service, cryptography. Whenever you try to digitally sign a document, once again, cryptography. So let's take a look at what cryptography is, how it works, and where and how exactly it is applied. So in a nutshell, cryptography is a subsection of mathematics that deals with algorithms that take some meaningful data,
a potential scandal,
and turn it into incomprehensible gibberish. Normally this is done for the sake of translating that information over some kind of network which is insecure and may contain potential adversaries that want to read that data. Although other uses for it are also fairly common. So encryption algorithms may be divided into two types, symmetric and asymmetric. Both types of algorithms serve the same purpose, encrypting some useful data so that no one can read it in the encrypted form. However, the difference between symmetric and asymmetric algorithms is in what kind of keys they are using for the process of encryption. Now, an important part of encryption algorithms is that to encrypt and or decrypt the data, you need something called an encryption or decryption key, which is a sequence of symbols that serve as one of the inputs to the encrypting algorithm. One input is your data and the other one is the encryption key. On the decryption side, correspondingly, it's a decryption key and the encrypted data. So symmetric algorithms use the same key for both encryption and decryption. Asymmetric algorithms use a pair of two keys, one for encryption and one for decryption. It is important to note that in asymmetric algorithms case, you can encrypt the data with either one of those keys and decrypt it with the other. You cannot encrypt and decrypt with the same key, but whenever you encrypt with one, you can decrypt with the other. So in different kinds of applications, those algorithms can be used either on their own, or sometimes they can complement each other towards the same goal. Let's first take a look for applications for asymmetric algorithms. You have probably come in contact with digital signatures before. You just look at a document and then at the bottom it says digital signature and then some sequence of symbols, some complete gibberish that doesn't seem to make any sense. And you're wondering, like, what does it even mean? Like, where do those symbols come from? Can I somehow alter them? Can someone impersonate me and sign a document with my name? Let's look at that. So the process of digitally signing a document actually goes in two steps. The first step is so-called hashing. Hashing is putting your input data through something called a hash function. A hash function is basically a mathematical, let's say, box that you put your data in and it produces an output of fixed length. So you get, let's say, 10 symbols. you put a document of 1, 2, 5, 10, 100,000, whatever number of pages in, and you get strictly 10 symbols on the output. It is important to note that hashing is different from encryption. Hashing does not require any keys or any other inputs other than the data itself. It is a publicly known algorithm. Anyone can put the same data through the algorithm and get the same result. It is strictly deterministic. Now, why do we do that? Well, first of all, it is easier to work with 10 symbols than with 1,000 pages if we want to encrypt something. And secondly, hashes serve a very important purpose, and that is verifying integrity of the contents of the initial document. The way hashes work is that a certain input generates some output. And if you change even a single letter, even a single bit in the input, you will get a drastically different output of the hash function. So that is very important to later confirm that the document hasn't been altered. So let's say we went through the first step, we took our document, we put it through the hash function, and we got the hash value in the output. What now? Now we approach the concept called public key cryptography. Remember, in asymmetric algorithms, we have a pair of two keys. Each of them can be used for encryption or decryption with the corresponding one. Now, one of these keys we make public, so that everyone knows that this particular key with this particular value is attributed to us. So this is like our public name on the internet, let's say. The other key is the so-called private key, which no one but us is supposed to know. Now, the important property of an asymmetric algorithm would be that we can encrypt something with our private key, and then someone can decrypt it with our public key, see that the contents are indeed the same that we have encrypted, and that confirms that the document has been encrypted by us. Now, let's combine that principle with the first step where we are hashing the function. So we have hashed our function, we get the hash value, and then we use our private key to encrypt that hash. So in the end, what we publish is the original document's contents plus the encrypted hash value. Why specifically that data? Well, the thing is, let's look at how someone else may look at the document and then try to verify that this is the original document, that it has not been altered, and that it has been indeed signed by us. So they have the contents of the document that we state are the original, and they have the encrypted hash value, which is called the digital signature. So what they can do, they can calculate the hash of those contents, they can decrypt the hash value that we have encrypted with our public key, and then they compare the value that they have calculated and the value that we provide. If those hash values are the same, that would mean that we are the ones that signed the document and that the document's contents have not been altered from what we are presenting publicly. And if, let's say, someone wants to fiddle with our document a bit, change a couple words and letters here and there, and publish that, what will happen? Well, very easy. So someone will look at the document, calculate the hash, compare it with the decrypted hash that the document provides, and say, wait, they are different. Someone is trying to mess with me. But I have figured it out. The same with someone trying to sign the document with their private key rather than yours. Obviously, they will not be able to decrypt it with your public key because it does not correspond to the same private key. And that's basically digital signatures in a nutshell. Not that difficult, right? Okay, cool. So we have figured out the asymmetric algorithm application. Now, what about the symmetric ones? The symmetric ones are used most commonly in communications over the internet. Like, for example, if you look at your browser right now in the address bar, the name of this website is probably starting with HTTPS, where HTTP is the name of the communication protocol and S is the name of the more advanced communication protocol with the additional layer of security, the additional cryptographic layer that makes sure that your data is encrypted in transit between your computer and the server and vice versa. So let's take a look at what happens when you're trying to connect to some website. Each website has its own pair of public and private keys. The public key is exposed on the internet as a part of something called a certificate, which anyone on the internet can read and can confirm that certificate with a designated certification authority. So when you try to connect to some website, your browser at first makes a connection to a remote server, checks their certificate, grabs that certificate, talks to a certification authority. The internet address of that authority is already embedded in your operating system by default. It talks to the certification authority and says, hey guys, is that website what it claims to be? And they say, okay, yep, that's correct. So you take, oh, cool, I'm off. You go back to the website, you say, okay, I trust you now, you are who you say you are, let's communicate. And after that, you have an actual communication channel established. Now comes the asymmetric part. With asymmetric algorithms, as we remember, we can encrypt data with one key, and then on the other side, someone can decrypt it with the other key. So what we can do is we encrypt our data with that website's public key, transfer it over the internet, all encrypted, no one can understand it. It arrives to the website, and that website can decrypt it with their private key. Because remember, asymmetric algorithms work both ways. You can encrypt with private key, decrypt with public, or you can encrypt with public key and decrypt with private. Cool, we have a communication channel established, data is safe in transit, no one can read it. Wait, why exactly do we need a symmetric algorithm in that case? That just sounds like another use case for asymmetric, right? Well, it is technically possible, yes. However, the fundamental problem with using strictly asymmetric algorithms for internet communication is that those algorithms are, well, slow, like painfully slow, compared to symmetric ones. Let's say you wanted to watch this video, this wouldn't really be possible in such high quality using only asymmetric algorithms. You wouldn't want to click on one of those hot singles in your area ads and only get a response by the time they're all dead from old age, right? So with that in mind, asymmetric algorithms are actually used to exchange a single key for a symmetric algorithm. So we request a symmetric key from the website generates that key, encrypts it with our public key, sends it over, we decrypt it on our side, and now we both have that key, and we can actually establish very quick communication via a symmetric algorithm. Most commonly used one nowadays is AES, which stands for Advanced Encryption Standard. So in a nutshell, the communication is, first, you confirm identity of the remote server, 2, you do an asymmetric handshake and the key exchange, and the third one, you actually communicate and send the data encrypted with the symmetric algorithm. Pretty simple, right? Okay, so that's all nice and wonderful cryptography, so advanced, yay! But surely there has to be a dark side. Nothing is ever that perfect, right? Well, yeah, cryptography sure does have its share of problems. Let's take a look at those as well. So the first concern with encryption algorithms is their origin. Most commonly used encryption algorithms nowadays all come from different intelligence agencies that have developed them over the years and at some point made them public. RSA has been developed by intelligence agencies. AES has been developed by intelligence agencies. The previously used standard called DES has also been developed by, I don't remember, I think it was NSA. I may be mistaken. And the thing with intelligence agencies is that, well, we don't particularly trust them, duh. We know how much they like to stick their nose where it doesn't belong. And in fact, some details of algorithms like DES or AES are presented in such a way, and they just look in such a way that it's just begging you to ask a question like, is that a backdoor? Like, do they know some way around the thing that they have developed? Because it really looks like that. And well, it is a valid concern, it certainly always is a valid concern with those guys, but independent experts have been constantly checking those algorithms for possible backdoors and vulnerabilities over the years. Countless experts around the world, and so far it seems like it actually works. So does it have a secret backdoor from NSA? Who knows? So far it doesn't seem like it, and we don't have any better alternatives. So, I guess we'll just have to roll with it for now. But other than having an outright backdoor into an algorithm, what about just breaking it? Surely no encryption is perfect. And sure, no encryption is perfect. In fact, that is the common theme of security in general. Security is always conditional. It's never perfect, it's good enough for a given case. The law of diminishing returns applies to everything, and security is no exception. At some point, increasing the degree of your security just becomes too expensive, and the cost just goes over the cost of a potential breach that you're trying to protect yourself from in the first place. So security is always good enough. Encryption is no exception. There are plenty of potential attacks on different ciphers depending on what kind of data the attacker already knows. Whether they know the initial data, or they know the encrypted data, or they know some part of the key, or some other things, or some statistics about the data that you're sending, and so on. It's an entire different discipline. Also very interesting. Do check that out. Maybe I will make a video on that at some point. Or they might try to just brute force it, but that would be a pretty naive approach, because brute forcing, let's say an algorithm like AES to 56, which is the one very commonly used online, would take you the longer than the age of the universe. So, probably not that viable. However, the interesting part is that most attackers don't really need to do any of that. The problem with encryption process is that it involves humans somewhere in between. Someone who either knows the key or has access to the storage of the key and can lead attackers to it in some way. So why build a giant data center just to try to beat down AES and break it and brute force it or do whatever, when you can just kidnap the person that knows the key and beat them until they tell you the key? Sounds simple enough. Remember, practical cryptanalysts don't break ciphers, they break fingers. So yeah, all in all, cryptography is not perfect. And it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be good enough, and it is good enough. Encryption algorithms come and go. There were previously commonly used algorithms that have been since replaced by more advanced ones, and that's normal. So you don't really need to worry about that. Just use common sense, don't expose your credentials left and right, and you should be good to go for 99.999999% of cases. And that's pretty much it for our introduction to cryptography. Congratulations! You now know symmetric and asymmetric algorithms, their applications, their downsides, and you can now make a more informed dive into the field. It has been an absolute delight to see you here, and I'm hoping to see you in the next video. And you know, the usual: like, subscribe, press the bell button, comment, good comment, bad comment, doesn't matter, I welcome all of it. And if you don't, someone will brute force your key on the first try and see all the kinky stuff you're trying to order from Amazon. You have been warned.